Chapter 28, The Intake Process. Every system of care attracts a wide range of individuals, many who are genuinely vulnerable and seeking stability, and some who have learned, often through survival, to use vulnerability as leverage within systems that lack structure. A stewardship economy cannot be sustained by good intentions. If it is designed to rehabilitate the orphan and shelter the vulnerable, it must be structurally compassionate without becoming structurally naive. Many capable, ethical, productive people reach a point where hyper-individualistic culture no longer sustains them. Burnout, isolation, debt cycles, competitive pressure, and the erosion of communal belonging drive them to seek more supportive societal structures. In addition, individuals experiencing homelessness, addiction, or chronic instability may voluntarily seek rehabilitative care within a system that expects accountability and eventual contribution rather than indefinite dependency. The intake process must apply equally to all groups. Displacement does not guarantee compatibility, and exhaustion does not guarantee alignment. For this reason, every external applicant enters through the same probationary pathway. Compassion remains universal, but integration remains earned through demonstrated stability, contribution, and alignment with stewardship principles. The first step is triage without dehumanization. Compassion must not eliminate discernment. A community can offer survival-level support without granting instant membership. That distinction is not cruelty. It is boundary clarity. For this reason, an outer transition camp is established as a permanent extension of the village network, not as an afterthought. The camp must meet a non-negotiable minimum standard of care: clean water, adequate food, shelter, sanitation, medical care, and physical safety are guaranteed from day one on a first-come, first-served basis. As long as resources are available, the doors are open. Clear communication about expectations is provided from the beginning. This is not exile, nor is it permanent holding. It is a buffer that protects both the arriving individuals and the internal culture from sudden shock. Integration without preparation destabilizes everyone involved. Stabilization first, covenant later. While in the transition camp, individuals are assessed for alignment to begin the integration pathway. Interviews matter less than observation. Words are easy. Patterns are reliable. For this reason, integration is not granted through an interview process, but through a probationary phase. A 3-month observation period allows for real data to emerge. During the probationary period, newcomers do not immediately integrate into the internal labor economy of the core village network. Instead, their work is directed towards sustaining and improving the transition camp itself and expanding future sites. They contribute to food production, sanitation systems, construction of new housing, soil regeneration, infrastructure installation, and maintenance. This accomplishes 3 things simultaneously. It strengthens the intake system, accelerates expansion capacity, and reveals patterns of reliability without risking disruption to the village core. During this time, participants engage in baseline tasks, rotate through mildly undesirable work, attend cultural education sessions, and experience the contribution expectations firsthand. They are not tested for perfection, they are observed for cooperation. Compatibility is assessed through behavior over time, not ideological agreement. Classification is not a moral judgment of worth. It is a structural tool for determining the level of containment, support, and trust appropriate to each individual. A behavioral classification system must be anchored in observable patterns rather than impressions. Charisma, verbal intelligence, ideological alignment, and emotional intensity are unreliable indicators of long-term compatibility. The evaluation model therefore measures consistency across 5 domains: cooperation, contribution, regulation, integrity, and alignment. Cooperation is measured by response to shared norms. Does the individual follow baseline safety rules? Do they comply with work assignments appropriate to their capacity? When redirected, do they adjust behavior without escalation? The key metric is responsiveness to correction, not initial perfection. Contribution is assessed relative to ability. Individuals are not evaluated against a uniform productivity standard, but against their demonstrated physical and cognitive capacity. Are they contributing effort proportional to their ability? Do they willingly complete their required tasks? Or do they attempt to avoid work through manipulation or excuse patterns? Contribution is measured over time, not through isolated effort bursts. Regulation measures emotional stability under stress. Does the individual escalate conflicts, recruit allies into grievance clusters, or interpret neutral events as hostile? When frustrated, do they seek mediation or move toward aggression? Improvement over time weighs more heavily than initial dysregulation. Integrity evaluates consistency between words and actions. Does the individual follow through on commitments? Are there repeated incidents of theft, deception, boundary violation, or manipulation? Integrity metrics are pattern-based. A single failure does not define the individual, but repeated boundary violations shift classification. Alignment measures willingness to operate within stewardship principles. This is not ideological conformity, it is behavioral compatibility. Does the individual accept that advancement requires contribution? Do they respect the probationary structure? Do they attempt to bypass process through personal alliances or emotional leverage? Each domain is scored across time intervals rather than daily fluctuations. Movement between tiers requires sustained pattern shifts, not temporary compliance. Documentation must be objective, behavior-specific, and reviewable. No classification should rely on private opinion alone. To preserve fairness and prevent the quiet consolidation of authority, classification decisions are not made by any single individual. Evaluation is conducted through a rotating, multi-person review body composed of members drawn from different households and cohorts. This structure ensures that no fixed group maintains long-term control over intake outcomes. Decisions must be supported by documented behavioral evidence across the 5 domains and require agreement beyond a simple majority when classification results in restriction or containment. Disagreement is not a flaw in the system. It is a safeguard against bias. The goal is not speed, but accuracy and consistency over time. Classification is not a one-time judgment. It is a living assessment that evolves as patterns emerge. For this reason, all participants are subject to scheduled reevaluation at defined intervals. Individuals may also request a reassessment if they believe their classification no longer reflects their behavior. These reviews are grounded in documented evidence rather than persuasion, ensuring that movement between tiers reflects genuine pattern change rather than temporary compliance or emotional appeal. Evaluation protects both the community and the individual. It ensures that inclusion is earned through demonstrated stability and that correction is based on evidence rather than bias. A community that pretends all people are equally safe will be ruled by the least safe among them, and one that cannot say no will eventually be destabilized by those who never learned to hear it. Yet, a community that treats all outsiders as threats will lose its moral center. A tiered system preserves both compassion and coherence. Tier 1 applicants may arrive dysregulated, traumatized, or depleted, or they may arrive well-adjusted and simply wanting a new way of life. What these applicants have in common is that they demonstrate willingness to cooperate within shared norms. They follow baseline rules, participate in assigned work to the extent of their capacity, and show gradual improvement with structure. Their mistakes are sincere. When corrected, they adjust. Those who pass the initial 3-month assessment phase will next undergo an integration process. During this period, newcomers are offered education in the community's governance model, economic philosophy, conflict protocols, and cultural norms. Integration into the core village occurs in phases. Limited supervised access becomes partial participation. Partial participation becomes full membership. Housing moves from the temporary nature of the transitional camp to assigned housing in the village only after mutual consent is established. Integration is not a test that one side passes and the other administers. It is a process of mutual confirmation. The individual evaluates whether the structure supports their growth, and the community evaluates whether the individual strengthens its stability. Lasting membership emerges only when both conditions are met. Both the individual and the community retain the right to decline full integration. Some individuals in the integration phase may need physical and psychological support to reach their full potential. These resources are viewed as investments and are only available during times of surplus. In times of strain, those who require more support may be placed on a waiting list until more resources can be allocated. Tier 2 applicants demonstrate inconsistent cooperation, alternating between engagement and resistance. They may test established boundaries, show difficulty maintaining consistent contribution without oversight, or respond to correction with deflection rather than adjustment. While these patterns are not predatory, they introduce instability that can affect group cohesion if left unstructured. The rehabilitation program is designed to support individuals exhibiting emotional dysregulation and maladaptive conflict patterns. However, during the interim period in the transition camp, while awaiting placement, Tier 2 applicants require a higher degree of structure to stabilize behavior and assess readiness. Work responsibilities are supervised, and access to privileges is moderated. The primary variable under observation is responsiveness to feedback. When corrective input results in measurable behavioral improvement, applicants may transition to Tier 1. When feedback consistently leads to escalation or resistance, reclassification is required. Tier 3 applicants demonstrate persistent aggression, coercion, theft, manipulation, faction formation, or attempts to undermine structural authority. They refuse correction, exploit ambiguity, and attempt to destabilize morale or security. Tier 3 is not managed through persuasion. It is managed through containment. Containment does not mean imprisonment. Exit is never blocked. Individuals who demonstrate antisocial behavior are transitioned from the main transition camp into a higher structure zone with restricted autonomy, reduced privileges, and increased supervision and structure. Continued access to basic food, shelter, and medical triage remains available under these highly controlled conditions in which interactions, movement, and responsibilities are structured to prevent harm to others and reduce opportunities for destabilizing behavior. The distinction between Tier 2 and Tier 3 is not only the severity of behavior, but the purpose of structure. Tier 2 structure is designed to support individual stabilization. Tier 3 structure is designed to protect the surrounding community while maintaining minimal conditions for future rehabilitation. Security must exist, but it must be procedural, not personal. Clear rules, visible consequences, and non-negotiable enforcement reduce emotional volatility. Ambiguity breeds resentment. Consistency breeds predictability. Violence prevention requires early detection. Escalation rarely appears suddenly. It builds through grievance, entitlement, and social reinforcement. AI-assisted monitoring, used carefully and transparently, can help identify patterns of destabilizing behavior before a crisis emerges. Conflict mediation teams intervene early, before containment becomes necessary. The purpose of Tier 3 is not punishment. It is protection. Classification is dynamic, not permanent. Movement between tiers is possible in both directions. Evaluation is based on pattern consistency over time, not single incidents. Transparency prevents resentment. Clear documentation prevents favoritism. Those in Tier 2 and 3 will require rehabilitation before beginning the integration process. Addiction treatment, psychiatric support, trauma recovery, or behavioral reconditioning are resource-intensive interventions and must be capacity-limited. A community that attempts to rehabilitate beyond its means will collapse under moral overextension. For this reason, rehabilitation must operate under a clearly defined intake cap. When capacity is full, applicants enter a structured waiting tier. This tier must still meet baseline standards of dignity and safety, but it does not provide full rehabilitation resources. Transparency is essential. Expectations must be communicated clearly. Rehabilitation is available, but it is not infinite, and it is not immediate. There is also a hard reality that must be faced without sentimentality. This system is not designed to save the world. It is designed to preserve a functioning template. That requires intake limits based on real constraints: food reserves, housing availability, care bandwidth, and cultural absorption rate. If intake exceeds integration capacity, collapse risk rises for everyone. Expansion must therefore be slow, measured, and sustainable. There will be moments when the only honest answer is, we cannot absorb more right now. That answer is painful, but refusing to give it can destroy the very structure that makes refuge possible. When the waiting list for rehabilitation is full, or if alignment cannot be achieved, the community provides structured transition support whenever possible. This may include coordination with external services, relocation assistance, or connection to environments better suited to the individual's needs and preferences at that time. Leaving the system is not framed as failure. It is recognition of incompatibility. A system that preserves dignity only for those who remain will eventually lose its moral coherence. By designing for both integration and exit, the community maintains integrity without forcing artificial belonging. At the same time, the community must guard against creating a permanent outer ring. If individuals remain indefinitely in the humanitarian zone of the transition camp without a clear pathway forward, a caste system emerges that erodes dignity and corrodes culture. There must be transparent criteria for membership, defined timelines for evaluation, and visible paths to full integration. No one should live in indefinite limbo. To prevent stagnation within the intake system, time expectations must remain visible and enforced. While flexibility is necessary to account for individual circumstances, the structure does not permit indefinite evaluation without direction. Probationary periods operate within defined ranges, and each participant receives clear communication about their current status, next evaluation point, and the behaviors required for progression. If movement does not occur over extended intervals, a formal review is triggered to determine whether continued participation, reassignment, or exit is appropriate. Clarity of timeline protects both the individual and the community. Without it, uncertainty becomes corrosive. With it, effort has direction, and expectations remain grounded in reality rather than nebulous hope. The deeper strategic insight is this: sustainability does not come from absorbing unlimited numbers inward. It comes from replicating outward. When individuals demonstrate alignment and learn the covenant structure, they can be trained to establish new nodes elsewhere. The goal is not expansion through central accumulation, but through distributed reproduction. A resilient civilization grows by seeding stable communities, not by swelling beyond its carrying capacity. In this way, compassion remains real, boundaries remain intact, and the covenant remains credible. The community does not harden into indifference, nor does it dissolve into unsustainable idealism. It preserves scale, protects culture, and extends hope through replication rather than exhaustion. To preserve even one functioning moral ecosystem in a fractured world is not a small achievement. It is proof that interdependence can outlast chaos. And if such a template can endure under strain, protecting dignity without collapsing into coercion, it becomes replicable, not a salvation engine, but a seed. That is enough.